having any problems with the sound, seeing the screen, etc., feel free to DM me or put your thing on the chat, and I'll do my best to help you out. And I'll be collecting the questions as well, so we can go all of them at the end of the session. So enjoy.
Amazing. Hello, everyone. And thank you, AJ, for having me on. I'm World community, and I've been on so many of these workshops that you've run in the past and gotten so much value out of them. So I'm just really super happy to be doing one of these. And I hope that all of you get some value out of what I share with you today. AJ, Community Queen, I think, is an amazing, amazing dream generalist role title. Good on you. Cool. So what I want to talk about today is basically using Notion to get organized with your job search activities so that we can make the job search as effective and as productive as possible, and just increase the chances of actually finding the right role for you at the right moment, instead of missing out on opportunities because you're not organized about the approach. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you. Let me know when you can see it. How's that? Oh, good. Eche, are you seeing?
All good.
Excellent. So we're here in Notion. Thanks for running that little poll. It sounds like a lot of people are somewhat familiar with using Notion. There are a few pros, a few people that are not familiar with Notion at all, but it's a tool that I love. I've been using it since around about 2020, and I've been doing Notion consulting for almost all of that time. And today I actually work at Notion, which is a nice kind of turn of events for me after working in Notion for so long. So yeah, like I said, I'm a super active member of the Generalist World community. I've got so much value, not just out of the events, but out of the hot seat that I did when I joined the community. That was like one of the most valuable career-related experiences I think I've ever had. And also just such a super active community in Slack. And I'm like accessing all the time, learning from a whole bunch of people. I've had probably 20 or 25 one-on-one meetups on Zoom with other members, just to get to know each other and share things about our careers and connect on being a generalist in general. So yeah, very, very happy to be a member of the community. And my role at Notion, I'm on the product adoption team, which is my role is template creator, but it's kind of a misnomer because I do a little bit of a lot of different types of things. And I think my actual role would be better titled Notion Generalist, which I'm really quite comfortable with and quite happy about. And I work across a whole bunch of teams doing the whole dot connecting thing that we always talk about in the Generalist World community. So it's good fun and very sort of impactful, cool work. And I'm glad to be doing it because I am a lifelong generalist. It took me my whole career until this point, 20 plus years of working, to start to kind of figure myself out. And I think that figuring out kind of actually happened when I first came across Generalist World, and I started to realize that there are more people like me, and it's not a bug, it's actually a feature. And so once I started to just devour all of the Generalist World content, I started to be able to sort of piece together the puzzle of how to communicate my value and where to be purposefully and strategically pointing my efforts and how. And Notion played a huge role in that. especially when I was doing my own job hunt that ended up with me working at Notion. And so what I did was I built for myself this really nice system in Notion to basically track all of the companies that I wanted to potentially work at and the roles that I was sort of highlighting each day coming across, even in newsletters like the GW Generalist Opportunities newsletter, which is also really, really good resource. And after using that system that I built for myself, I decided to turn it into a template, into a Notion template system. And so I released that on the Notion template marketplace. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Okay, so let's first explore why we even need a tool to manage a job hunt. When you're kind of getting started in your search, whether it's because you're looking for a new position that better suits you, or because you are not working at the moment and you're looking for something new, the things that really count for you are obviously your skills and your experience, and network is naturally a huge value. And those are the things that we think about when we think of what we need in order to land a role that we're looking for. But my hypothesis is that none of those have any value. Actually, they all have exactly zero value if they're not organized in such a way that you can actually leverage and use them. And so if we get super organized, we put them all into a system, we're keeping track of everything in a very prudent way, then we're going to avoid missed opportunities for roles that might be perfect for us. And we're just going to, in a very general sense, have a very pointed and a very purposeful approach to our search efforts and our search strategy, and which companies we're even looking at and which types of roles we're going to uncover in the end. So having a system is extremely helpful. I think that applies not just to job hunt activities. I think that can probably be said about literally any endeavor in your life. So that's one of the reasons why people love using Notion, because they can use it for all different types of things in their work and in their personal lives. And they start to just find ways to in a very customized way, get their shit together, get everything organized in such a way that they're making the right decisions at the right times. And they're kind of aware of everything that they need to be doing. So why are we even talking about Notion? I think that the things that I love about Notion that apparently 100 million other people also love are that it's extremely flexible. You basically start with a blank page and you've got 100+ building blocks. It's kind of like playing with Lego blocks, and you just build your software tools, you build your systems exactly the way that you want them to be for your own use case, or for the way that you work, or the way that you think. And because you can do it in such a flexible way, in such a customizable way, it becomes extremely powerful. And you end up with tools that are useful for you and that you actually use and you actually want to use, and you actually create habits around using. One thing I tell everyone that I speak to about Notion, and I speak to people about Notion a lot, admittedly, and I've done quite a few Notion-centric workshops, and I've been doing Notion consulting for years. The thing I tell everyone is that the software tool doesn't actually really matter all that much. You can use Notion, you can use a patchwork of other software tools if it works for you. What really matters is that you're actually using something and you're actually populating that system with your data and with your research, and that you're actually engaged with it in a routine way that has low friction and doesn't feel like a chore. So you actually end up using it each day or however often you need to. It just so happens that Notion is that flexible and powerful tool that allow us to build these systems for ourselves that really do kind of suit our individual needs. And so there's just kind of a higher likelihood that you're going to end up using the thing. But if you use other software, it's also perfectly okay, and power to you. You should just keep using whatever you're using. But I'm going to show you a little system that I mentioned, and hopefully everyone will jive with it. But let's first talk about what Notion is exactly for the people who responded with what is Notion in the poll. So in a very general sense, Notion is what they call an all-in-one workspace tool. And so it's kind of like a document editor like Microsoft Word had a baby with a spreadsheet like Google Sheets or Excel, and like productivity tools like Asana, Monday.com, Trello, Apple Notes, to-do lists, Todoist, Paperless, like all of these things together, you can achieve the things that you do in each one of those. You can achieve them all in one integral system for yourself in a tool like Notion. And so it basically works using these little blocks, and just without spending too much time getting into exactly how to use Notion, because that's a whole workshop unto itself. What we're looking at here are Notion blocks. And so this right here is a toggle block, and this right here is a bullet block, and we can add text blocks, and we can add checklist to-do blocks, and we can add all kinds of other stuff. There's this huge menu of all kinds of Lego blocks for us to choose from, and we can get all kinds of formatting, titles. We can do callouts and quotes. We can embed images and videos and PDFs and code and all kinds of other integrations with other tools like Google Drive and Maps and Figma and Framer, and you name it. There's an integration, and you can bring them all into any page in Notion. And very importantly, the most sort of basic building block in Notion, and the where Notion gets a lot of its power, is from something called a database. And a database is, well, it's something all of you have used in other tools before. It's basically like a spreadsheet. It's a place where you capture and organize your data, and you treat it so that it actually has value for you. And so I'll just add a little database here on the page. Okay. And then we'll call it new database. Opa. And there you have it. It's a little spreadsheet. And so it works with columns and rows, kind of in a similar structure to a regular spreadsheet, except that each one of the columns is in Notion called a property. And there are a whole bunch of different types of properties that you can add to a database, from text and numbers and tags and multi-tags and statuses, dates, people, other users. And then you can add files and URLs, emails, very powerful formulas, and a whole bunch of other types. And each time you add something, let's say we add a status, then you can customize it, and you can give it a name, and you can give it an icon, and then you can start capturing data. So here's an entry or an item of some sort, and we can give it this status. And then we can take this little database that we've created, and we can view the same data that's in the database in different ways so that it has different value for us. So right now we're in a table view, which is like a spreadsheet view, but we can also see it in a board view, which is like a Kanban, as many of you have used in other tools like Asana or Trello. And we can view the very same data in charts, in a simple list, on a timeline if we have dates, on a calendar if we have dates, in a gallery if we have images. And so it just gives us a lot of power to express the data that we've captured in a lot of meaningful ways to actually give it context. So that's a really super lightweight kind of overview of what we're doing in Notion in a very, very basic way. So I'll just clear these out. And we can, in a moment, jump into the actual system. So this system that I built, the intention was to do a few things, to achieve a few things. Number one, during our job searching, we want to be capturing and shortlisting, basically curating companies that we might want to work at. And I'm quite opinionated about this being kind of the beginning of a job search strategy, the sort of North Star to direct what we actually should be focusing our attention on. And then another little database for us to capture and organize the actual open roles and opportunities and postings that we come across each day, from wherever we're getting them, from newsletters, from job boards, from other people, from LinkedIn, wherever. Capturing those and organizing them and making sure we're not missing out on application deadlines for any of them. And then actually managing the application process for each one of the opportunities that we capture. And then we want to be able to track and prepare for the interviews that we get invited for. And so I created a little database to do that. And then another little database to keep track, kind of like a CRM, keeping track of the follow-ups and action items and interactions and bumps, that any communications that we have with people during our job search, just so we have a paper trail of everything. Okay. And in a general sense, doing all of these things in order to ensure that we are just very efficiently channeling our job search time and energy. And this is an important one because like most of you, I think, are probably in a job search sort of state right now. And I've been there before also. I know that it saps energy. It eats up tons of time. It can be extremely draining, especially if it goes for months on end, and just very, very time consuming. So we want to be absolutely sure that by being organized, we're channeling all of that energy and time where it actually has value. So we don't get kind of, I guess, burned out by the job search, which I think happens a lot of the time, right? So what do you say? Let's jump in. This is my little demo, but all of you will have a chance, if you like, to actually get your hands on this system after the fact. We'll send out a link. Ej will send out a link both in the chat later on and also in an email after the workshop. Cool. So here we are. It's actually a pretty simple system. We've got a database for companies, another database for roles and opportunities, one to keep track of our interviews, and one to manage our correspondence and interactions and communications. And then I added a little bonus database for us to just keep a tidy little list of all of the resources, job boards, newsletters, advisors that we are relying on during our job search activities. All right. So the way to use the system is spelled out here. It's first curating a short list of the companies that you might like to work with, then capturing the roles in the roles and opportunities database, then tracking your correspondence and preparing for your interviews. And what's nice is that all four of these databases that I'm going to show you in a moment, they're all interconnected. So when you add a company, you can connect it to roles and opportunities that you've captured. If you add a new role or opportunity, then you can connect it to a company that you've captured. Or if you haven't captured that company yet, because it's a role at a company you haven't even heard of, then you can just add that company to your list like that. And so it's connected in all directions here. So let's jump in. And just for the purposes of this demo, I populated this already with a bunch of just imaginary sample entries. But if you end up getting this this little template, then you'll just go in, you'll delete all of them out, and you'll start populating it with your own. So we've got one view, a table view here, where we're capturing all the companies on our list. And I think that this is an important starting point in a job search, because it kind of sets the stage and sets the tone and sets the directional strategy for where your search efforts are actually going to be pointed. So it's kind of like when you're starting like a branding exercise for a company. You first start with, who are your customers even going to be, and what kind of company are you, and like what's your company personality. I think that it's kind of the same when you're trying to figure out the directional strategy for your job search. And that is, what companies do I love? What companies do I align with? Which companies would be like my absolute dream companies to work with, that represent everything that I like, or tools that I work with, or strengths that I have, or ethics that I align with also. So having a hot list like this, having like a dream list, is just a very, very good way to get the process started. And so every time we add a company, we have a property here where we can give it a rating, a heat rating. And I've pre-populated it with a few tags. Maybe this company's just an idea, or maybe it's very interesting, or maybe it's your absolute dream workplace. And ideally, you'd have like 5 or 10 dream workplaces, and you'd maybe start your efforts there. And you'd keep track of their careers page, their job boards, and you'd use those also as sort of like a template for what other types of companies you might look for that are kind of similar to those. Okay. And this is important because in a moment, we're going to actually do another view of this same database, but we're going to treat it using the data that we capture here in the heat rating. And we're going to do the same thing in a bunch of other ways. We can also capture whether that company works remote or hybrid or in person. And we'll take notes on where they're headquartered, if that matters, whether we have any connections. And this is a super important one, because I think this is going to be the most powerful tool in your job search. And maybe later on in the workshop today, I'll give you a little anecdote about an experience that I had that kind of illustrates why connections and networking in job searching is so powerful and frankly so essential. And then we have 3 more properties here, 3 more columns. These are a specific type of property in Notion called a relation property. And this is what allows us to connect to those other databases that we're going to talk about. So maybe I'm going to leave that for a moment, and we're going to come back and talk about those. But before, let's take a look at another view of this very same database. And we're looking at all of the exact same companies that we've captured here, except now they're sorted and grouped by whether they're remote or hybrid or in person. So this just gives you another way to look at all of that data so that it's in a specific kind of context. All right. We have another view where we've done the same kind of thing, a grouping, except we've grouped by the heat rating. So our dream workplaces and the very interesting ones. And what we've done is we've filtered out the ones that are not very interesting or dream workplace. And we've done that so that we can get a really nice sort of tidy view of our top picks. Because at some point, your all companies view, you might have, 50 companies on this list or more. And it becomes kind of a lot of information for your eye. So to have a tidy little view of your top picks, can come in handy. And then lastly, we've got an archive view. So anytime we set one of these that's on our list, we set it to archive, boom, it gets automatically pulled out. We don't need to see it anymore, and it gets popped onto our archive view. All right. So the more you use this database, the niftier it'll get and the more valuable it'll become. So it's actually really easy to add stuff. Let's just take an example. Let's add Generalist World, okay? And let's say Generalist World is most definitely a dream workplace. It's fully remote because it's distributed. It's headquartered in the world. Okay. And connections. I know. AJ. Cool. So it's as easy as that. Now, let's jump over to our roles and opportunities database. So this is a very similar type of thing, except it's meant to capture a different type of data. And so every day, while we come across really interesting open roles and postings and opportunities, the ones that we like, that we think we might consider actually applying for, we're going to capture them here in the same way. We're going to add it there. We're going to populate it with all of the metadata in the various different properties, and we're going to be able to keep track and keep on top of it. So in this case, we have different properties because after all, it's different type of data that needs a different kind of treatment. So when we get a new role, we'll put the role title here. So let's say it's, what's a good role title at GW? Let's say member ops manager. Cool. I don't know if that role exists, but if it doesn't, maybe it will one day. And we'll pop in the URL of the listing or of the post. And then we'll pop in our salary that is listed on the post and whether there are any benefits, just so that we can have like an overview of all of our interesting opportunities, so that we don't have to be constantly referencing them all on their individual pages. And then we'll capture whether that particular role is remote or hybrid or in person, what type of employment it is, whether it's full-time or contract or fractional. And here's where the magic starts to happen. So we have another one of these relation properties. This one is a relation to our company database, the company's database that I showed you just a minute ago. And that pulls from all of the companies that are listed on the company database. So we'll just go ahead and select Generalist World. There you go. And now this role is connected and associated with that company. And what that does for us is we can go back into the company's database and we can always see, if we go to Generalist World, we can see the roles that we've curated that are connected with this particular company. So we start to get that context value of the relations. So let's jump back over to roles and opportunities and see what else we've got here to bring value to capturing all of this. So we're going to capture the location for a role. We're going to capture who the contact person or the recruiter is. So keep it in context and their contact details and maybe where we keep in touch with them. So if it's an email or if it's a DM somewhere or WhatsApp. And then very importantly, what's the application deadline, if there is one, and our status, our application status. And so I've pre-populated this with a bunch of useful statuses: not started, application submitted, in interview process, hopefully at some point offer received, and then negotiating offer. And then for complete statuses, we have never heard back, which unfortunately is a reality of the job search process, or I was not chosen, totally fine. And at some point, you're going to accept one. For each one of them, you'll also capture the date that you applied, just for a paper trail. Always valuable to have a record of that. And then we have another couple of relation properties. So a relation to our correspondence and interactions database, which I haven't shown you yet, but I will in a moment. Same with interviews. So before I go over to those, I'll just show you that I created another few views of this roles and opportunities database to bring a little extra context value to the roles and opportunities that we're capturing here. So we were looking at, right now, we were looking at the active roles. And active roles are ones, and it's filtered by ones that have a status that's not complete, not like never heard back or I was not chosen, or roles that have an application deadline that is still active, still in play. All right. So as soon as an application deadline is missed or passed, or we hear back that we weren't accepted for a position, then it gets moved automatically into the archive. Okay. But I created another little view here, which is deadline approaching. So this is for any applications, any roles that have an application deadline that hasn't been hit yet. So there's still time to apply, but has a status of not started, meaning I haven't yet applied. So you can come to this view on a day that you sit down at your desk and you're just trying to figure out, okay, what have I already curated that I need to apply before missing? So you come to deadline approaching. Okay. And then another view with just all roles and opportunities with no filtering. And yes, the archive, like I showed you. All right. So we now sort of have a pretty clear idea how this whole Notion data capture thing goes. And so we're going to do this very same thing with interviews. So as you're submitting your applications and you start ideally to get invited to do some interviews with some of the companies and for some of the roles that you've curated, you're going to capture your interviews here. And it's going to help you to just keep everything straight. So you'll pop a new one here. You'll give a name to the interview. Maybe it's like a panel interview with the management team, or a second round interview, or an initial interview, whatever. And then you're immediately going to link that interview with one of the roles and opportunities from the roles and opportunities database. All right. So let's say for our example here, this is first interview, and that is for the member ops manager role at Generalist World. Okay. And who's it with? It's with Eche. There you go. And it's today at, oh my goodness, it's in 20 minutes. Okay. So this is sorted by date and time. So this is coming to the top, almost to the top, because there's another interview on February 7th. Okay. So it's scheduled. It hasn't been done. So that's the automated status. If for whatever reason, Edge is not available, she'll let me know that it's going to be on tomorrow instead of today. I'll just say it's rescheduled. Once it's done, I'll mark it as done. Okay. Very much like in the other databases, I've made some other nifty views. One is where we're grouping all of the interviews in the database by which role it's associated with. And so you can get a very clear, very summarized view without getting muddied up by all of the other interviews that are on the interview database list here of the interviews associated with this particular role. Okay. And frankly, speaking from experience, a lot of roles can go to like 4 or 5 interviews, and it can get a little crazy. So it's nice and frankly valuable to keep them all straight here. There's also a calendar view, and it takes all the very same interviews that you put into this database, except it expresses it on a week by week calendar. You can actually change this to month by month, but I think that it's quite valuable seeing them on a week like this. And so it says the name of the interview, who it's with, and then which company and for which role. So it's all at a glance, and you can see what's coming up next week like that. And you can also open it in Notion Calendar if you decide to use Notion Calendar, which is a super awesome tool. And then we have another view where we can see which interviews are upcoming, and yet another view to see which ones are already done. Okay, so everything is nice and neatly organized, and you can start to kind of get an idea of why we're doing all of this here. And so second to last, let's take a look at the correspondence and interactions. So I think probably most of you have used some kind of CRM tool at one point or another, where you're actually capturing your correspondence and your communications with stakeholders or the people of interest or prospects or whoever. And it's just a really good way to have a paper trail and a record of all communications, because that gives context to your next communication with whoever that person is. So every time maybe you're going to send a bump to a recruiter or submit some kind of case study assignment as part of an interview process, or some kind of follow-up, you can capture it here. You capture the date that you sent it, the activity, you'll give it a name, and then these two are relation properties. So you can specify which company it's for and which role it's associated with. And if you want to see them in another view by company, you can see it that way, or by role and opportunity. All right. So one very important thing that I wanted to highlight last was that every time you add an entry to any of these databases, it gets automatically populated, the page. And I guess I forgot to mention, but every single one of the entries in any database in Notion is actually a page unto itself. And you can open it like a page, and it has its own page body, which is essentially a document editor where you can put all of your own customized blocks. And so I created a little page template for each one of these 4 databases, so that when you add a new company, you automatically you get these sort of suggested types of data to put into that company's page. So maybe some specs and stats, maybe some additional notes, anything that will be valuable to your process here. So this is for Generalist World. So maybe, well, first of all, most importantly, above all else, let's give it the appropriate emoji. Okay. I don't know. It's a distributed team. It's, I don't know, like 6 or 7 people, let's say. What else? Aligns with my values. Additional notes. I don't know. Whatever you can think of. This is, I don't know, super cool company that I'm a member of their community, and I follow everything that they do, like that. Anything that you think might have value for yourself, any notes, just pop them in here. And this is another really powerful Notion feature that I added here, which is called a linked view. And so this here is, we're looking at our correspondence and interactions database, the one that I showed you, except we're seeing it through this little window from inside the company's database, this particular company page on the company's database. And it's filtered to this particular company automatically based on which company page it's on. So I can always see, if I go into my Generalist World company page on my company's database, I can always see all of the correspondence and interactions that I captured that I had with that particular company. And so it'll just bring me that context immediately. And so the same thing is true on the roles and opportunities database. When you add a new role, it automatically spins up a different page template where you can list key role details, any key skills. You can paste the job description or a link to it, any relevant links, maybe their careers page, maybe a blog article about working at someone who worked in that role at that company, like that, and any additional notes. And then again, you have a linked view to the correspondence and interactions that are related specifically to this role. So everything is hyper interconnected. Okay. And then lastly, let's talk about this very, very simple little additional database that I added, which is a place for you to capture all of the resources and job boards and newsletters and advisors, what have you, that might help guide you or be a resource during your job search. So, for example, Generalist World, opportunities for generalists, and I pre-populated this with a bunch of options for tags. It's a newsletter, but also GW is a community. Perfect. And here's the URL. So once I have my 10 or 20 resources that I rely on, this is my single source of truth for where I'm going to check each day. When I sit down at my desk during my job search process, this is where I start, and I can always just click through to any of these. And even during my own job search, I even had a couple of people who were kind of like advisors, people who work in the people space. And so you can, if you have any of those, you can add them here too. Cool. So there you have it. That's the whole system. It's not terribly complicated, but I can say from experience that it really does help to have it all organized. And it brings us to this end result, which is that not just the process being organized, but we're saving a ton of time, and we're making sure that we're not missing opportunities just because everything is always in sight and in view and in this single source of truth and in context. And we're doing all of this for the one reason, which is just to optimize our chances of actually finding the role that we ideally would like to have, and then landing it. If we don't find it, if we miss the opportunity, we're obviously not going to land it. So let's just always try and increase our chances of being there at the right place at the right time, having submitted the application on time to the appropriate person in the right way, stemming from the right initial strategy. And I think that if you put a little bit of time and effort into actually populating a system like this, then it will undoubtedly pay dividends for you. And I think that, like I said earlier, if you take this approach, not just to your job search, but to other things in your life too, it probably has the same effect. So if any of you are interested, Ej is going to send a link to the template. I want to mention this very importantly, that if you are very experienced in Notion or somewhat experienced, you can build a system kind of like this for yourself, because like I said, Notion is so flexible, and it's a tool for people to build their own tools, not just to be users. So you can absolutely come up with your own version of this kind of system and tailor it to yourself. But if you want to save some time, if you want to save a bunch of hours, and you're interested, then you can grab this template. I sell it for $27. I did a little discount code for Generalist World to get it for 50 off for $13.50. Feel free, but also feel free to build a system like this for yourself. Okay. And I think with that, the timing is quite good, actually. Let's take a few minutes and do just an open Q&A. This could be anything related to using Notion for your job search, general job search type questions, what have you. So yeah, I'll pass the mic back to you, Ajay.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I tried to answer some of the questions as far as I know, but there are a couple of questions, especially around the usage of the template. So I'm just going to stop the sharing and so we can see everyone here. I'll read the questions that I pinned, but anyone, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q function here on Butter to see that you have a question, and you can get the mic from that. But let's go from the beginning. One question was about, if we get a template, can we customize it to our liking?
Very, very good question. That is, in fact, the intention. The Notion marketplace has some 30,000 pre-built templates, and the intention with all of them is not to be a closed tool that isn't meant to be customized. The intention with all of them is to be a starting point. So you have someone who's a professional template builder getting you started with best practices and good UX and systems that are based on actual experience and actual usage. And then you take that and you start molding it to your needs. You start customizing it to with your own properties and your own views and your own filters, your own grouping. You can add your new databases and connect those databases using relation properties to the ones that come with the template. So when you get a template like this, generally each database is locked, and all you have to do is click unlock, and then you can start messing around with the structure of the database. But in a very general sense, yes, when you download and duplicate a Notion template, the intention is very much for you to customize it to your needs.
Yeah, agree. Saying that I'm doing that myself in the past as well. I see Sasha's question and I love that question, but I'll go with the template question first as we're on that. Another one about like, how is it integrate with other tools like Microsoft or Google Suite apps? Or for example, Lindsay asked, if we currently have a Google Sheet tracker, is it possible to import that data, or what's the best way to do it?
Yes, also a good question. And yes, it is possible to import, and it's possible to export, and it's possible to tie in a whole bunch of different types of integrations. So if you have data in a spreadsheet, in a Google Sheet, you can just export it as a CSV and import it directly, into a Notion database. You can also bring, if you don't want to use a Notion database the way that I showed you, you can also bring Google Sheets directly through the native Google Sheets integration with Notion. You can bring a Google Sheet right onto a Notion page so that it's embedded. And then any interaction you have with that Google Sheet will just take place through that iframe. What else? Yeah, there are so many ways to integrate Notion and Notion databases with other tools, and so a lot of people use tools like Make or Zapier to create integrations with other tools that they're using. But also very recently, like in the last couple of months, Notion released another feature called webhooks. So you can actually directly integrate with all kinds of different things. It's extremely powerful. So Notion, in a very general sense, is designed to be very, very flexible. And so anything that you kind of can think of that you might want to do with Notion integrating with other tools, there's some way to do it. It might be direct and native. It might be through some kind of automation tool. It might be through a webhook. It might be some other hacky way, but there's a way to do it.
Cool. Wait, where was the other question that we had?
Ooh, I'm just going to cut in. I saw Maxine's question. So yeah, I do have a template that I created for freelancers to manage projects. I spent 4 years working as the COO and and project manager at basically a digital agency based in France. And during that time, I created this very comprehensive system based on all of that client management experience. And I turned it into another template, and that's available on Notion Marketplace also. So if you're looking at this template that I shared with you today, you can just you can click through to my profile there, and you can see that other template. By the way, just for context, my profile on Notion Marketplace is called Systematic AF, which is kind of like my my Notion consulting brand name.
No, I love that. That's great, by the way, with the freelancers. I think for like generalists, portfolio careerists, fractional workers, freelancers, like so many people using it to manage like multiple projects at the same time. I know Nikita in the GW team also has like a neat dashboard for like managing different portfolios as well. I saw Orchidea's question about, is it possible to automatically create tasks to follow up? For example, if she applied to a job, and then can she like create like an automated task to update the status to follow up with the hiring manager?
Yes. So as of last year, Notion databases have a pretty powerful and comprehensive automations tool. And so you can tell your database to do all kinds of different automated things based on dates, based on statuses, based on tags, based on whatever other properties you've built or exist in that database. So the answer is yes, and it's quite flexible. And so there's, like in most automation tools, there's like one place for you to select what your trigger is. When this happens, then, or if the status becomes this, then, or if the date meets this variable, then, and then you select your action like that.
Yeah, I think maybe we need to do like an automations and tasks thing, like a Notion 102 workshop.
Sure. Yeah, that's a whole workshop unto itself, I think.
Cool.
But yes,
well, let's wrap up with Sasha's question, is like how it's been working at your dream company with your dream title.
Yes. It's been great, actually. It was the #1 top company on my hot list, on my dream companies list. It was at the very top of that database for me when I originally built the database. And at that time, it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of a pipe dream. But fast forward a little bit, and I'm working there. So I'm super happy about it. It's a great company. It's one that I align with on so many levels. And it's a bunch of very, very sweet people with great vibes. So I'm extremely thankful, a little bit lucky, and worked hard to sort of put myself in front of the opportunity. But maybe I'll end with one little anecdote. I think is going to be kind of telling about what the job search process actually is like. So I had this feeling for a while during my own job search process that taking a very pointed approach to creating relationships and networking with the people from the companies on my dream company list, I felt like that would be important, because I had applied to a ton of roles at companies that I thought would be like really interesting. And I spent quite a bit of time, frankly, on those applications and making them great. And I thought that in many of those cases, I was just an absolute perfect candidate, only to never hear back from a lot of those. And I couldn't really imagine why I wouldn't at least hear back. And I started talking to a few people that I know in the recruitment space, and they explained to me, and this is something I didn't know, they explained that because job posting receives so many applications, like hundreds upon hundreds of applications, there's no way for a recruiter or a hiring manager to sift through them all. They just don't have the bandwidth, right? They don't have the time. And so they rely on AI powered tools to do the sifting for them based on keywords, based on tags. And so it ends up filtering and presenting the recruiter or the hiring manager with a small stack of applications that meet those whatever filter criteria. And so the ones that do in fact capture those keywords are the ones that kind of end up getting chosen. And you might be the absolute number one perfect fit for a role, and your application simply may never get seen by a human, which is kind of a sad thing, right? And I mean, I know a lot of companies are now starting to take a more human approach to recruitment, but it's just it's a tall order. You know, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of applications to get through. So companies end up just kind of relying on this technology. And so my hypothesis was that I needed to connect directly with the humans, with the people at the companies that I knew I wanted to work at. And so over the course of a number of months, I started focusing on like 5 or 7 companies that were on my dream company list. And I started to try and interact online with the people from those companies, commenting on their posts, sharing things and tagging them, just creating connections with them and trying to add as much value and demonstrate as much value as possible. And over the course of a number of months, I actually did create a bunch of online professional relationships with a bunch of the people at these companies. And I was able to have direct conversations with them and kind of bypass that giant queue of applications that would never, ever get seen. And just to bring this all into context, it was probably like maybe a year ago, I went to this in-person event. It was a workshop here in Toronto where I live. And there was a panel of like 4 or 5 people in really great roles from a bunch of interesting tech companies like Amazon, Google, Shopify. I can't remember which other ones. And they were like product managers, project managers, marketing managers, UX designers, these kinds of people. And there were, I don't know, like 100, 150 people in the audience there at this event. And the event was all about crafting your resume and your cover letter to make the best possible approach when you're applying for jobs. And it was like, I don't know, an hour long, all kinds of tips and tricks on how to do it. And to me, it still felt kind of futile, because if you're going to do all this work to optimize this thing and then you're going to send it in and no one's ever going to see it, then I don't know, it's kind of moot, right? And so at the end of the workshop, when they had open Q&A, I stood up and I asked the question, okay, of all of you on this panel here, you got great jobs. Did any of you get your jobs by sending in a cold application? And the answer from all of them was, unfortunately, all of them got their jobs either through their network or through some kind of internal hiring or internal promotion. None of them got their jobs through a cold application. And to me, that was very telling of the state of things. And so I just want to underscore the importance of creating some kind of personal connection with actual humans in order to increase your chances of actually getting some face time, getting seen by someone who's going to be like a gatekeeper or a hiring manager or a recruiter. Cool. I hope that's helpful. It was certainly a meaningful lesson for me. So yeah, I'm happy to stick around and answer more questions if you like, but I'm not sure how we're doing on time, Ajay.
All good, but I'm loving that. I'm loving your story, and I'm loving that people also resonated with it and like sharing on the chat as well. Well, thanks, Dave. Yeah, anyone, if you have any like questions, we have maybe time for one more question. And as always, you're going to be receiving the recording of this event, so you can just go back and watch how to use the template again if you're stuck on any space, but I'm sure they would be also happy to answer questions if you got stuck, and
Absolutely.
you can to him on LinkedIn, or if you're on GW, you can reach out to him on Slack as well.
Amazing.
Mm.
Cool. Look, I just want to thank you, Ajay, for having me on here, but also thank you everyone for joining, and I hope that you got something from this